to order. And I would like to ask Miss Janet Chapin to lead us in the pledge today. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, everybody. I'd like the record to show that all governing board members are present, except for Ms. Sexton Reeves, as are almost all of our principals, and members of cabinet. And I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. So, yes, welcome to tonight's meeting, and I'd like to remind everybody of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards, white cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item, and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Policy also states there is a 5-minute maximum time limit per speaker. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. If you do not want to address the board but wish to give your comments in writing, you can do so on a goldenrod sheet, and all members will receive a copy. And that takes us to item 2A, approval of agenda. Oh, and please let the record reflect that Ms. Sexton Reeves has been meeting.
Would the governing board approve the agenda as presented?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do I have any public comments? Okay. So seeing none, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Madam President, Madam Superintendent, not yet. Members of the board and our distinguished community leaders. First of all, I just want to say what a great job everybody did at the Welcome Back Rally. The governing board members who were able to attend were so helpful in honoring the schools that earned awards, honoring the staff that have been here for years in retaining our love of family here in the Creighton district, and Jeannie for an outstanding and inspirational welcome back speech. So thank you so much for that. Our opening day, I'm going to look at my principal colleagues and just say, what? Was that the smoothest you've ever had? We had never have had such a smooth, I mean, now I think we can stop knocking on wood because we're now in the second week. But I don't think we lost a kid. I don't think a bus turned, I think we had one bus turn left when it should turn right. The parking lot, had a few, we were ready for it, getting our kinders to classes without too many tears. It was an amazing, and schedules were moving, just an outstanding opening, total teamwork. Congratulations to everyone. We are watching enrollment closely. We'll hear a report later from Mr. Mann. With current year funding, we need to watch it every day. It's a new day in current year funding. The governing board study session is coming up Saturday, so we look forward to our time together where we get to rethink our board expectations, rethink board self-eval, and examine superintendent goals in relationship to the strategic plan. So I look forward to Saturday. And finally, I would like to say our principal of the year, Andy Gutierrez, is getting another mark of recommendation from recognition. Last board meeting, we talked about the Facebook funds you were able to raise for the sports program, and tonight you learned about 2 hours ago that Kaboom awarded LCK $100,000 for a playground. Wow. You're putting in for stuff and the universe is responding, so way to go. One of our strategies is the universe. You want to tell a little bit about the background of Kaboom?
So Kaboom is a company out in the East Coast, and they help bring in different funders to build community-based playgrounds. And so we applied for the grant back in March. It was a very large grant, a lot of time consuming. And they found 3 partners for us, the Arizona Coyotes, the Still Foundation, and Play World. And so we'll kick off the event in mid-October, and they'll be sending architects, and the kids will get an opportunity to design the playground of their choice, and then the architects will use some of their designs as well as some of the parents and teachers to build, and it's going to be built in one day in mid-December. So.
Way to go. Oh, well, I'm sorry, we have one more. We have an award for Kathy Irwin from the Transportation Association. Will you talk to that a little bit, Mr. Mann?
Yeah, it's actually the highest award that the, what's called TAA, or the Transportation Administrators of Arizona, gives to anyone in the school transportation industry. And while she's been deserving for many, many years of this award, this year was the year that our very own Kathy Irwin was recognized by that association, where she's spent, a lot of energy and effort in working not only to make our transportation one of the best in the state, but to help elevate transportation for students throughout the state of Arizona. So she was recognized as their Transportation Person of the Year.
And we'd like to have her come up and come on up and stand with the board for a photo, and Emily will get our photo together. We'll just do it right here, yeah. And that way we can.
You'll have to scoot through the table between Eric and Susan, maybe? That works?
Just jump on it.
Yes, you know, come to the center, you're in the center. All right. Thank you.
Way to go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we have our governing board reports. Ms. Sexton Ruiz, do you have anything that you'd like to talk about tonight?
None at this point. Thank you.
Ms. Sim, how about you?
I had the honor of attending the Welcome Back rally. I thought it was very good. We witnessed Dr. Lugo's enthusiasm and energy. That way. It was quite nice. Dr. Stroker? Yeah. He was a really good speaker. And he just started off, and I realized that I had seen him in NSBA. So thank you for bringing him here. He's good. It was a very good presentation. That's about it.
Mr. Zaragoza, how about you?
So as Dr. Lewis alluded to, it was the first week of school. My daughter started first grade, and I guess what's on my mind is it's our second year in school. We kind of know what to expect, but there's still like uncertainty, maybe less from my daughter and more from my wife. But it's made me think about what we're doing, what we're about, and how we build our organization and our community. And I know even tonight we're talking about our academics and what the state measures. But as we look at current year funding and as we look at the type of school district we want to raise, the element of customer service really is on the top of my mind. I just wanted to thank Dr. DeMar for welcoming me on the first day and checking in. I got a call from Noah's homeroom teacher, which was awesome. It's things I remember doing as a teacher. And there's an app that we get some almost daily communication, which is really helpful. So I know a lot of our teachers and a lot of our principals engage in this type of customer service. I think that it's 2017. There are many choices our families can make, and as we want to be a district of choice, it's just something we need to be super diligent about and intentional so that we have the best product out there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shepard? And all I really wanted to talk about was Rally. When I was teaching in Creighton, we had a convocation, and it was always nice to catch up and see everybody, but Rally just has a very different feel about it. And it's really like a party, and I appreciate that. And one of my favorite things about Rally was Mr. Mann dressing up like Mr. Rogers, which was really great. He did the whole thing where he changed from his work clothes into his play clothes. And so it was wonderful to see so many people having such a good time coming back to school. I wasn't able, unfortunately, to hear the speaker because that was my first day back with students. So it's part of the reason why I don't have any voice, because I'm now in week 3. So I'll keep my comments to a minimum. Let's move on to approval of consent.
Move the governing board approve consent A through L in accordance with policy BEDD-R.
A second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, now to the Easy Merit Student Academic Performance Data.
President Castine, board members, Dr. Lewis, team, we have been looking forward to being able to come tonight to have a discussion with the board in regards to our 16-17 AZ Merit results. Tonight we will, Dr. Dubin will start with an overview of the district level reports, and then each school will be sharing some of their highlights from their reports, as well as what are their next steps. And so as teams have come back to the schools and during the summer, the principals, a lot of analysis of the data have gone on, and they really have honed in on some areas in which they're going to focus. And so we certainly would encourage a dialogue and not just have this be a presentation. We really want this to be interactive. And then I'll close out with just an overview of the AFRAP model. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dubin.
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, and Dr. Lewis. As Dr. Peterson said, I'm going to begin with an overview of our district level results. These data are interesting to consider because for the first time, we actually have 3 consecutive years worth of AZ Merit data to compare. It has been a number of years since we've had a continuous set of data that we can look at and create trends. When we examine our student scores in English language arts, there are a couple of things that stand out to us. First is that we see the trend of relative stability, and in several grade levels, we actually see trends toward increased student scores. This is significant given the amount of change that has been introduced into our English language arts classrooms with the technology tools and resources, as well as the instructional materials. When we continue forward and look at our overall grade level performance in mathematics, what stands out to us is the stability of the scores. We see some slight increases and some slight decreases over the 3-year period of time. We also see some really interesting results in 5th grade, not only in terms of the stability from 2015 to 2017, but also in the 10-point jump from 2016 to 2017. I'll return and talk about that in a couple of moments. After looking at our own results, one of the things that we do is to try to contextualize those results within those of the broader statewide community of students. So in looking at these scores statewide, the red line represents the trend of students across the state of Arizona, while the blue line represents the trend of students here in Creighton Elementary School District. What we notice here, especially when looking at this comparative trend, is that stability in scores. We see a similar trajectory for students across the state with some slight increase. We also know that the student scores in the state of Arizona are increasing at a rate greater than students here in Creighton. When we consider and compare our scores to those across the state, we see that stability once again really evident. We notice that while our scores in math declined from 15 to 16, we recovered from that decline and are similar in trend to the state. But we do have a gap that exists between the students in the state of Arizona as well as and our own students here in Creighton. So in order to continue to progress and advance the academic the scores of our students. We've taken some very significant steps and will continue to do so throughout the year. The first, and this relates to the 5th grade mathematics data point, we looked at that and we examined what was different about our curriculum, unit guides, our scope and sequence documents, and other instructional resources at 5th grade math. And what we determined was that the curriculum cabinet the prior year had done a significant deep dive into the standards and had spent a lot of time in an unpacking process that was actually quite rigorous. So using that approach, we targeted our unpacking process this year a little bit more deeply and specifically around standards in the other grade levels where our students appear to have the greatest level of misconception. We knew this year in Curriculum Cabinet that we did not want to rearrange everything. There was no need to do that, but rather we wanted to take a very laser-like and targeted approach to our unpacking of standards and using that same process that had created such a pop in the scores of 5th grade mathematics. We've also enhanced our units of study by embedding the math practice standards, which we will be continuing our professional development focus on this year, as well as enhanced technology resources for teachers to use. Those are referenced directly in our units of study. We've also updated our common assessments, once again, which are available as a resource for our teachers to reflect greater enhancement through technology tools, technology-enhanced questions, similar to those our students experience in Xenier. We're providing dedicated assistance to our principals and to our instructional leadership team members through the educational service team using a very targeted and focused team-oriented approach wherein members of Ed Services are specifically partnered with our school leadership teams so that they can become embedded, authentically present member of the problem-solving and leadership team at the school. We're very excited about that. We're also continuing our professional learning focus. We're trying very hard to maintain the less is more framework that we use to guide our planning for new teacher induction, new educator orientation. Maintaining our focus on attending to precision, which is our mathematical practice standard 6. Creating and critiquing arguments, mathematical practice 3. And engaging students in learning, as well as using questioning and discussion techniques, both of which come from our Danielson framework. So these are our 4 big areas of focus as we implement the curriculum tools and resources that have been so carefully curated and crafted this past year. And this is all in response to our review of the data and the ongoing feedback that we receive from our teachers throughout the year. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone to our principals, and they will provide you with brief updates on their side. Mr. Sarah.
Yeah, Dr. Dubin, before we move to the school level data, if you flip back to the, let's say, the ELA district data, I guess the question I have when we look at these supports is how do we know if these are effective? Because we're looking at a widening gap for ELA, we're looking at kind of just a parallel thing with the math, but we've invested $1 million in a new curriculum. We've done a lot to, I think, enhance our culture. So some might argue like none of that is paying off. I'm not suggesting that this is the only measure for student success, but I would love for you to just talk to that. Like how do we know if these supports make a difference?
Thank you. It's an excellent question. I'd be happy to speak to it. I'm going to refer us to this slide, which shows the performance, the scores of students at each grade level. Often in the literature, we are referred to what's called an implementation dip, when one variable is introduced, such as a new set of instructional resources or new technology tools. Very often, when you have comparative data, you'll see a slip or a decline. So when we evaluate these data, one of the things that we see is that really didn't happen for us in English language arts. I offer that as one piece of evidence that supports the fact that for year 1 of a very comprehensive English language arts adoption supported by a tremendously complex technology infrastructure, it actually did its job in that first year. We didn't go backwards, and we actually were able to gain some ground over where we had been in 2016. So I think in any year 1 implementation, There was a lot of learning that took place. We learned a tremendous amount about, with the English language arts resources, the things that we could take out without invalidating the structure and the spiral that's built into those resources. You know, they're packaged to meet the needs and demands of a variety of states across the nation. And so when a teacher typically gives those resources, there's a lot there, and you spend a lot of time taking them apart and engaging in choice making. So we learned a lot about what we didn't need to include, and we use that to really trim down our units of study, and we expect that that will help us continue the positive trajectory that we've laid out in that round. So we're eager to return to these data in another year and examine how after 2 years of implementation, things look and things change, but I do offer that based on the fact that we did not experience that off-site implementation dip, we have moved forward and made significant progress. And there's more work to do.
So one more question for now. Do we know which other, because not all these other districts had $1 million curricular adoption. Not all have invested in culture the way that we have. And do we know what other districts are doing? Because if we just look at the other slide that has the gaps, the state of Arizona seems to be growing faster than we are, or the gap is widening. So I'm just wondering what they're doing differently that we're missing, because the gap is it's widening. It's going the wrong way.
So in our plan, the next step, this has been an interesting year in several ways. One of which is that we have 3 years worth of data, but the other is that the state has been very funny with us in terms of the embargo. You'll recall in prior years, there's always been an extended period of embargo where we're not allowed to have this kind of conversation, and we can't engage in conversation with our top sister districts about the results. This year, that suddenly changed, and while the A through F labels, which Dr. Peterson will speak about shortly, will be under embargo when they're eventually released, these data didn't come with an embargo, but people are very reluctant to share. So what we are going to engage in as soon as we're able, once the letter grades are publicly available, we're going to engage in deep discussion with our sister districts, particularly those who serve populations similar to ours. These data reflected on the screen include all students in the state of Arizona, and we're really going to try to dig in and examine closely the practices of districts. Because I'm grateful to see how and in what way they compare and what they're doing related to
Totally fair, and I just don't want to discount that it is the entire state of Arizona, but the state of Arizona's kids is looking more and more like Creighton every year, not different. So I look forward to you sharing those findings with us as well. Okay.
Good evening, how are you? We did really well at Mackin. We received the Outstanding Growth Award for the second year in a row. We're seeing large amounts of growth in all of our grade levels, as you can see by the slide here. So what I did is I went back and asked my staff, my teachers, I said, what do you attribute this growth to? And so these are some of the things that they came up with. This year we had a teacher-led ELD cadre, so really concentrating on ELD students. And what they told me is their goal was to really look at Wonders curriculum, the ELD methodologies, and iPad integration, and develop strategies monthly to go back and implement with our ELD population. We also involved ourselves in instructional growth setting goals with teachers. So each of our teachers had a personal growth goal, and they said that was very helpful last year. We also have teachers that felt that they wanted to take more ownership of the data and the data meetings and the planning of the PLCs. Even though we had implemented Wonders and Study Suite, they felt that they wanted to, they themselves dig into it with our coaches' help, but they wanted to take ownership of that. We also have quarterly PDs on Engage New York, and mathematical practices right from the beginning, and our STEAM vision. So each quarter I made sure that we had at least one professional development on each of those categories. We also did some master course scheduling change to allow for longer periods in math and ELA at the middle school. So instead of a 60-minute period, it was 120-minute block of times. When we look at areas of concentration, I talked to my leadership team, I talked to my teachers. What they said we still want to concentrate on is differentiated professional development. We have anywhere from a brand new teacher to teachers that have 15 years of experience. So they want some differentiated PD for questioning and discussion strategies and engaging students in thinking maps right from the beginning and mathematical practices. So we'll be working on that this year. We also know that 5th grade was struggling a little bit in our language arts block. So we're doing additional coaching and planning support for our 5th grade teachers, especially with that Wonders implement, but also with our 6th grade students who went to 6th grade, maybe a little behind that. We're really concentrating on that area there. And then we're going to do a continuation of goal setting and action planning for our targeted interventions so that we meet the right students, we have the right amount of time with our students. So we're very pleased with our results this year. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, executive team. Papago in 4th through 8th grade, we had some decreasing passing rates in both English language arts and math. Our 4th grade passing rate was only 9% in ELA and 13% in math, so those are low areas for us. In 8th grade, ELA was 11% and 10% in math. That's another low area for us. We did see some increases in 3rd, 6th, and 7th grade for language arts and math. And there were some high points in our data, I could dig in deeper, but really, this, what I want to talk about tonight is how we're going to shore up those areas that are struggling, those fragile students who need our support. So there's 3 major areas. In 4th and 8th grade, we definitely have to provide increased support in those classrooms. And also, not forgetting about those students who are now in 5th grade, those fragile students who need support. They struggled in 4th grade. We can't just assume that they're going to be fine. So we're going to provide support there. It comes in the form of, we brought on a new instructional coach at our site, and she has Creighton School District instructional coach experience, and she was a middle school math teacher. She's amazing, and she's going to be working very closely with our teachers in mathematics. Also, additional support from myself, the principal. I'm going to be in those classrooms one-to-one, providing one-to-one coaching and support, watching those students, watching the instruction, giving that support and that feedback to those teachers so that they can find success for those students. Another major area is providing professional development for improving intellectual engagement. And this is at a student level. So we're really looking down towards the students, listening to what the students are doing, creating look-fors for what the students will be demonstrating in the classroom that indicates higher levels of intellectual engagement. We're going to be providing Kagan student-to-student discussion structures such as timed pair shared, quiz trade. There are others. We're also going to bring back, and it's been a while, but it needs to come back at Papago, the Marzano Building Academic Vocabulary Structure. It's a 6-step approach to building academic vocabulary. And then our grade level teams are going to work together in their professional learning communities to develop look-fors to analyze the student learning. So what would it look and sound like from the students in a classroom if they were engaged in high-level questioning and discussions with each other? And also, what would intellectual engagement look like from the students? So the students will be, they'll be using structures to argue with each other, to reflect on their peer responses, to explain their thinking and cite evidence. The students will be using precise language, and their learning will be animated and energetic. Those are all hallmarks for high-level questions and discussions. And in engagement, the students will be engaged in problem solving. They'll reflect and close each lesson. They'll close on their learning, and the teacher will provide time for that to happen. The students will be selecting from a range of options in their learning, and they'll make their thinking visible. They'll say things out loud, they'll write things down, they'll perform in the technology. So we'll be able to see their thinking. And the last major tenet for helping Papago in these areas is providing, actually kind of bringing back the idea of professional learning communities to the grade levels, but re-emphasizing the structure of the DO4 professional learning community. So in the first week of each cycle, the grade level teams will be planning for upcoming instruction. They'll be breaking the learning goals down into sub-objectives, task analyzing day by day in language arts and math. What do we need to plan for those students to learn that day? And planning those together as a team with coaching and admin support. The next phase of that cycle, the teachers will be developing common formative assessments. We don't mean like 10, 15 question tests. We mean like short cycle, really to the point quizzes that they can use in their classrooms, and then the 4 teachers can get together to analyze those common results and make decisions in the third phase of the cycle, which is where they decide what are we going to do next for those students who did learn it, those students who mastered that concept, and also for those students who didn't move ahead, what do we do for those students? So that structure, that very familiar structure of PLC is back at Papago and is being supported by the administration and coaches at the school.
Mr. Geyer. So I appreciate the attention to all the details and how this is going to, all the inputs that that you and staff will put in. It just feels like a lot, and I'm not an instructional leader, so I'm not here to second guess any of that, but I guess the questions I have would be, like, how will you know, like, if there's so many new things you're doing or bringbacks and enhancements, how do you know if that's effective? And how does the staff like pull in and organize all the different things that you want to do differently this year?
Well, like with the students in frequent formative assessments, the coaches and the principal and assistant principal will be going into classrooms weekly, and we've kind of split the school into 5 parts and 5 groups of teachers, about 10 each. And we go, after we deliver a professional development or we teach the teachers a concept, we go into the classrooms and we tell the teachers, schedule it with us next week. Let us know when we can come in and see this in action. We're going to come in and we're going to celebrate with you. We're going to get these small wins together as a team. We're going to track these and display this as data, just like we do with student data. We're going to display this as teacher data. How great are we doing? So we're going to celebrate together. And for those teachers that are still struggling, we provide continued support. We give them a tier 2 intervention, just like we do with students, and we give them another boost and give them another chance to succeed. So with all of these things that I listed and talked about, Mr. Zaragoza, it's just a bit by bit. And we've planned out our quarterly initiatives. We're getting help from Diane Pesh, our new principal coach. We're planning these out so that they're logical, they're timed, so that the teachers have time to practice in the classroom, show it off, share the data for success, and then move forward into the next logical progression.
Just curious, approximately how many teachers do you have on your campus total, and how many of them are brand new teachers?
We have 51 observable teachers at Papago. We're sharing a couple of those with other sites, so it's kind of right in there, 49 to 51. And there are 7 teachers who are new to the profession.
And how many do you know off the top of your head how many are new to the district?
There's about, the psychologist is new to the district. There are about 11 people at Papago who are new to our district.
In addition to the 7?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. All right. Just curious.
I have a question. When I visited last year, I think, was it 4th and 8th grade had additional supports?
It's 4th grade.
Okay. And so is that continuing? I see you do have a new coach. Is that an additional coach?
No, that's not an additional coach. She's our behavior interventionist, but she has that dual talent of instructional coach, and we're taking advantage of that. The support that you saw last year in the 4th grade classrooms, we don't have that person back this year. We could explore that for the future, but I'm sure that these structures are going to work for us. They're tried and true. Our coach is behind this, and the administrative team is behind this. We have a pretty strong plan in place.
Don't think you want me in stereo. Good evening. Monte Vista had a really good year last year. They had the second highest passing rate among grade levels and subject areas. The number of minimally proficient students in English language arts decreased in grades 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. The passing rates in ELA remained stable in 3, 4, 6, and 8. The passing rates in math increased in grades 3, 5, and 8. And in grade 4 math, the passing rate did decrease and the number of minimally proficient students increased. So that's something they were paying attention to. We were also recognized at the rally for Creighton District Academic Achievement Award for higher than average achievement on AC Merit benchmarks and Azella for most grade levels. So when we talk about next steps, one of the things that I reflect on is the fact that we are a new team and we have new opportunities in being a new team. We made the decision not to post a student achievement teacher position when that position became available from a vacancy. So we have 2 instructional coaches and we're reconfiguring what that staffing looks like. So our instructional coaches are going along content lines rather than specific to grade levels or to task. We got together for a couple of days when we all came back on board in July and really talked through what our leadership team was going to bring to Monte Vista and how we were going to support the new initiatives that are there, as well as helping to grow our staff. That is actually very stable. One of the great positives for Monte Vista is that we had no turnover in our teaching staff in the core curriculum. So that is a great testament to Mr. Madison and the culture that he established there. We have a minimal new staff presence on our team, and we didn't shift any grade levels for teachers. So we have teachers coming back to the same grade levels to be able to work on their skills and to be able to help the students achieve. So that's a great benefit for us. We looked at how we're having coaching conversations, and what we're doing this year is we're going to focus, of course, on the big picture items from our conversations with district-wide, as far as attending to precision, questioning, and constructing viable arguments, and that will be embedded in the coaching conversations that the teachers have with their coaches. We have divvied up the staff among our 3 coaches and are using that model to help strengthen those conversations in a one-to-one setting, as well as then rolling into the teacher planning time. So when we talk about our teacher planning time, those meetings are going to focus back on the full instructional cycle, similar to what we heard earlier. Looking at building teacher self-efficacy in the data analysis piece. One of the things that I think is really important is for teachers to own the data that is part of their class, whether it's a formative assessment or a state benchmark or state test or local benchmark. We want to make sure that the teachers understand where that data lies and what they can do to support student growth based on that information, and be able to contextualize that and talk about that with each other, with parents, and to be able to make a change in perhaps how they're approaching instruction. We are going to start implementing Lexile testing this year as well for grades 4 through 8. That gives another piece of information for comprehension that we don't feel we have that piece totally nailed down yet, especially in our middle school. So we really look forward to having that additional piece to work with. We have experts on our campus in balanced math and in thinking maps and a couple of different strategies for teaching, and so we're going to capitalize on this teacher's expertise and ask them to do some professional development. We're working with a teacher to develop sort of a cafeteria model of PD for high interest topics. So for instance, in balanced math, if they're working on math review, they want to kind of hone those skills a little bit, then there would be an opportunity for them to do that at a certain date and time, and have it available electronically if they're not able to do that. So we are trying to meet the needs of the teachers without taking away too much of that crucial common planning time that they have and the limited amount of time that they have during their day. We are also, of course, continuing to look at guided reading and how we can make an impact, not just doing guided reading groups in the lower grades, but also looking at how we can do centers and stations in the upper grades to support students. We are also very excited that we're beginning our journey in developing our framework for becoming an arts integration campus. We had a very wonderful experience with a consultant that we were fortunate enough to hire from Changing Education Through the Arts, through the Kennedy Center. She came to us right before school started. I had 100% attendance on the day before school started from my staff, which was great. I'm sorry, it was probably 95%. But the information was a nice stage to set for what arts integration really is. And I think what our staff took away from it were a couple of things in conversations that I've had. One is that we're going to move slow to move fast. So I'm not coming in saying, this is what the vision is and we need to see the vision tomorrow. That's not the style at all. But really, what is arts integration? And we talk about how arts can enhance the educational process, so we see that in daily practice. But this is really looking at how the arts standards can be brought into regular curriculum and co-taught with those regular standards to then move those students forward in different areas. So an example, just to kind of give you an idea, the National Core Arts Standards include creative thinking, and they include critique of work, and they include focus, and they include a lot of the aspects that dovetail nicely with what we expect from the Arizona standards and what we would expect from best practices in the classroom. And that aligns with what our district is focusing on this year and what we're focusing on as far as the mathematical practices and how the Danielson framework is being implemented. So it's a nice dovetail, it's a slow rollout, and it's a great conversation to be having. So we're excited to be in that position. And part of that, by extension, if we're focusing on critical thinking, we're focusing on discussion and conversation, and we know that that's going to be tied to better outcomes for students that are still struggling. So that's our goal.
Well, that's great, and I heard that Monte Vista is our school, our arts school, so that's great. I'm very familiar with the art standards, and I'm very familiar with when I present art or write grants for art, I always talk about how I'm going to take general education things like science and math and form them into the art projects that I do. So easily it can be switched around the other way. Except I want to caution you, as an artist and as a public art project person, there's nothing like the real arts. You know, there's nothing like real performance, learning real music, learning to paint, learning to actually do real arts. And while you're right, classroom teachers can integrate art standards into their classroom, but they don't have, I mean, they're not everything, you know. Somebody might be the expert in math, somebody might be an expert, but we're not Cuba. In Cuba, they take one child and they make them an expert in everything, and then they send them out their way because they give them about 10 years of college, but we're not that, you know. So I just want to caution you that, you know, it's still important to have the true art disciplines also.
Absolutely, and that's part of being an arts integrated campus, that there's a continuum. So we have art from the specialists, which are still part of our school. In fact, this year, Monte Vista had an opportunity to add an arts component. We have a full-time drama teacher. So we have expanded the arts in our school that way. We were also adding in electives in the middle school. So this year we're offering, in addition to beginning an advanced band, we're doing guitar, we're doing clay, we're doing drawing as a specific focused elective for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So there are those opportunities, and we're always looking for ways to incorporate our specialists as part of that conversation. And of course, they're going to be the experts. And as a former theater teacher, I know that you can't just expect someone to really love to be up on stage and be able to know what it means to be in a performance and how that can relate and how that can support the learning through the content. What was really interesting, and just to kind of illustrate the point, one of the training sessions that Lenore was her name, that came in and worked with us, we did a whole afternoon on character interviews. So we're using drama standards of focus, character development, and movement to explore a character in the book and to infer what the next part of the story was going to be, and to have us as students explore possible outcomes for what was happening in that photo in the book. It was about Pele. So it's an opportunity for us to just kind of look at what we're doing already and to be really intentional in how that looks in an art-focused way. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been telling my teachers that we don't expect you to be experts in the arts. We know who our experts in the arts are on the campus. They'll be great resources, but what we'd like is to start to incorporate and be very mindful of how that can support the learning that's happening in the classroom. We're also fortunate that we borrowed an idea, or pigtailed to what Mackin is doing. They referred us to the Phoenix Symphony. So Mind Over Music is coming to Monte Vista this year, and we're continuing our partnership with Child's Play. So as we're developing these connections and these opportunities, I know that it's just going to add to what Monte Vista has to offer for our community.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, first of all, I was a big drama geek, and I was my choir president in high school, so I played this, and yeah, we should all be night, yes, totally. But the thing that really stuck out to me and what you spoke about is the PD by teachers, because I can't tell you how much money people have spent on me to become a trainer and never then used me, you know? So I appreciate the fact that you are providing teachers with those opportunities, you know, to teach to their colleagues, because it really kind of scratches an itch, and you feel like, you know, like, you feel like the teacher leader that you want to be. So thank you for that, I appreciate that.
Dr. Lauren, I just want to put a plug in, just to be redundant, but and I know Dr. Peterson's been on this, but the Act One field trips are up and out.
We have
So,
applied for a few, and
Great.
also the Arizona Opera.
Yeah, great.
Opera in schools.
Good evening, everyone. So, as a new principal at Loma Linda, new to Creighton, one of the first things that I wanted to do, especially in the month of July, was to look at multiple data points, and one of those was the AZ Merit, and quite a few celebrations for Loma Linda. Passing rates increased in grades 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 for English language arts. In grades 5 and 6, we increased the number of students that scored minimally proficient in English language arts. While our celebrations in math include passing rates increasing in 3, 4, 5, and 8, and in grades 3, 4, 7, and 8, the number of students that were highly proficient in math increased as well. I was also very impressed and in awe of some of the results of the TEL survey for Loma Linda, and had an opportunity to work with my leadership team for a couple of days in July to look at those multiple data points, and from those come up with some next steps for Loma Linda and some focus goals for this year. So taking a very strengths-based approach, we wanted to build upon increasing teacher capacity by strengthening an existing coaching system at Loma Linda they refer to as the teacher toolbox. And then looking at collaboratively working with my coaches and administration to get into classrooms and continue to build that coaching system and mentoring, and then look at what the effects are on students and increasing student achievement through doing that. And a lot of listening and getting to know people, because there's many systems that I'm just beginning to learn at Loma Linda and in Creighton. A second goal that showed some area of opportunity on the TEL survey was to increase parent involvement. So I've met some wonderful parents and families at Loma Linda in this last week, and I am really looking forward to encouraging their engagement in the school. Alternating some of our parent opportunities were more geared towards morning, so we want to alternate between afternoon or late evening and morning to kind of reach multiple parents. One of the first things that we want to do is to offer an opportunity in both English and Spanish to explain parent view and synergy to our parents. How could they use that? Why do they want to look at that? What can they do with it? Maybe provide a glossary with some vocabulary words so that they can help follow along if Spanish is their primary language. So I'm really looking forward to that, and have some parents that are very excited about some of the opportunities we've been talking about. And then the last goal for Loma Linda will be to focus in on our subgroups. So part of the looking at our various data points showed that some of our special education students are not showing the growth that they most definitely are capable of demonstrating. And so how do we do that? And we have had some wonderful conversations about how really and truly it starts with a cultural shift of these students belong to all of us, and we need to have a team approach in order to make this happen, and then expectations. So after we've done that, we're systematically looking at the services that we're providing, any RTI, any of their pull-out services, and what happens with them when they're in Gen Ed or even in our special area classes. How are we differentiating for those students? So we're looking forward to growing in that area as well. And I'm looking forward to continuing to listen and learn from everyone at the moment.
Do you know if the partnership with the AARP group will be continuing?
Yes.
And I assume you saw good results from that, because that's what it was your first year last year, right? Okay.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're expanding. There will now be an after-school component. And so some of the same tutors will be working with second and third grade students in the afternoon, and then we're going to work with students who would normally be in PAC during that time to extend that opportunity.
Good evening. Here's some of the highlights that we had at Larry C. Kennedy School in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. We did have a number of students in the minimally proficient category decrease, which is good because then that shows that they're moving into the partially proficient and proficient category. In ELA as well, the number of students in grades 3, 5, 6, and 8 scored proficient increased. One of the areas that we're going to be looking at closely is the third grade ELA. We only had 12% of our students pass ELA, so you'll see in the next steps we'll show you how we're addressing that. In mathematics, we had a minimally proficient decrease in all grades except for 7th grade. Again, that shows that the partially proficient and proficient category has increased. And the number of students scoring proficient in math increased in grades 5 and 8. So the next steps for Kennedy, one of the pieces is we're kind of going back to the basics and going back to the planning pieces. And so what we're really doing is working with our teachers to look at, let's go start with the objectives. Let's look at the objectives that the teachers have written in their lesson plans, as well as the objectives that they have posted, as well as the objectives that they're stating to the kiddos, and make sure that they're correctly aligned and rigorous for our students. And then as we see teachers showing proficiency in that category, then we'll continue to move forward and go into sub-objectives, questioning and discussion techniques, and then the assessment piece. And so we're going to break it down into teachers and provide different professional development through the Tuesday planning meetings, where we work with our teachers if they need assistance in those categories. As I mentioned, our third graders struggled a little bit, and I think if you recall from last year, it's a tough group. It's a group of kiddos that are just, they feed off one another. And so fortunately, the Workday group that provided kind of a mini makeover to Kennedy last year, they provided us some money to work with Workday mindfulness. And they're going to be really working with our fourth grade students to show them how to use that beautiful mindfulness room that we have at Kennedy School. So a gal from Joy Rickberg is going to be coming to our school once a quarter, spending the 2 days at Kennedy and working with the students and with the teachers, showing them how can I get back in my zone if I'm feeling a little frustrated, feeling out of the zone, because if you are out of that zone, you're not going to be learning. So we're going to be using that money to help support those fourth graders. As I mentioned earlier, the differentiated professional development, has been mentioned before, we have new teachers, we have teachers that have been around for a while, and they all need different things. So we're really looking at providing differentiated professional development, and like it's been mentioned before, we're going to utilize teachers for that as well, because obviously our leadership team can only accommodate 4 to 5 groups. So looking at our teacher leaders to help us provide that training to the teachers, and again looking at that creating and critiquing arguments, engaging the students in the learning, questioning and discussion techniques, as well as that attending to precision, as the other schools have mentioned. Something new is right from the beginning. One of the feedback that we were getting from our teachers is sometimes the wonders didn't help the teachers effectively teach students how to write. There was samples and activities, but not how to teach it. And so we are working with, right from the beginning, Erica from Loma Linda had came to our school and provided us training to our teachers. And so we implemented some trailblazers. We had 4 teachers who have provided, right from the beginning, classes to their own students, and they're kind of being our spearheaded leaders and helping us and helping our teachers teach students how to write. Discussions and goal setting. One of the pieces that we looked at a little bit last year was having goal discussions with students. So looking at the past assessment results and saying, okay, you didn't do so well on that second benchmark assessment. What can we do differently for this final assessment to make them do better? And so we want to do that earlier on instead of right before AZ Merit, and have that happen during the benchmark assessments as well. The last piece is looking at our TEL survey data, as our teachers wanted some more support both with the academics as well as the behavioral support. And so what we're doing with the alternating Thursdays is having 1 week where we look at academic RTI, where we look and discuss any academic concerns that the teachers have, and use our leadership team as well as our psychologists to figure out, okay, what are some interventions and new things that we can put in place to help those kids academically. The next Thursday, we'll be looking at behavior. Are we having problems with behaviors in the classroom? What are some interventions and systems that we can put in place to help students with the behavior? The next Thursday, we'll be looking at the action planning and goal setting that was discussed. We don't want action planning to just become a document that just stays on the shelf. We want it to be a living document that you're going to be using on a daily basis. And then the final component is, again, that right from the beginning and the guided reading piece. We want to make sure that the teachers feel comfortable and confident with that. So that's our next steps.
I have a question, I think, for Dr. Peterson. So the third grade, so 12% third graders passing ELA. Are we retaining any of them? Or were they all successful in summer school? Again, I think I asked this last year too.
Yes, they were all
Okay.
successful, so that would be words in terms of the RTI processes of really knowing where our kids are and then putting specific interventions into place for them.
A question, and maybe for Dr. Peterson, but Mr. Gutierrez, you mentioned these data discussions with staff and students. I guess, how often does that happen? Because we do ATI testing throughout the year. I guess a bigger district-wide question is, were there any big surprises? How do we radically accelerate this? I'm curious if there was a disconnect between what was being monitored and assessed throughout the year and then what results we got when students took the AZ Merit. So I'm just curious how often that happens and if there were any surprises.
Sure. What we are learning is that we need to continue to provide some professional development for on-site the progress monitoring piece. So as we reduced the district-wide assessments. The goal is to return it back to the school sites, the classroom teachers, so the classroom teacher can turn around and respond as quickly as possible. And so what we found throughout last year is we need to continue to support that this year with helping in the structure of that and what that looks like and how frequent that is being done within the classroom. So there's definitely room for growth in that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I might also point out the surprise of the 5th grade. I just think that's, Eric, you pointed it out earlier, but I think that 5th grade story is so fascinating in terms of, you know, the depth of unpacking the standards really helped the teachers fully comprehend, and it really showed the concentration. So we're going to look to ways to replicate that.
And that had direct implications to curriculum cabinet this summer as they did that deep dig of the standards, and so as they provided the new documents for this year, that's been a part of that process. So. Thanks.
At Gateway School, we had overall passing rates of 10% in ELA and 11% in math, and the number of students who scored notably proficient in ELA increased in grades 3, 4, 5, and 8. However, our celebrations are that in grades 5 and 8, they showed an increase in the passing rate in ELA, and grades 3, 5, 6, and 8 showed an increase in math, with 5th grade having the largest increase at an 8% increase from the previous year. So moving forward into this year, Gateway had an opportunity to rebuild and restructure our leadership team. So as a collaborative leadership team, we will be providing weekly support to teachers in relation to best first instruction, which includes guided reading, student engagement, and questioning. So what that looks like is during our site leadership meetings, we'll be discussing which classrooms will be visited by each of the leadership team members to provide feedback specific to those areas in the classroom. And then we'll also provide that weekly feedback to teachers on guided reading, the questioning and discussion, engagement during those coaching conversations. And we'll be providing professional development and follow-up coaching in regards to attending to precision and creating viable arguments and critiquing the work of others, which are those mathematical practices that were referenced earlier. We'll also be providing training and support with school-wide climate and culture through positive behavior interventions and support. So we have been working with our special education coordinator, Alan Hirsch. Our teachers received 2 days, about 6 hours or so of professional development already on PBIS and just restructuring what that looks like at Gateway. And then our teachers have been rotating through different areas of the school, providing lessons to the students on what those expectations look like in each area of the school, led by the leadership team for now, and then we'll be turning that over to the teachers so that every student in the school is receiving the same message about what our expectations are. We also will be providing focused collaborative team meetings, including data analysis and curriculum planning. So we, with part of the restructuring, we also had the opportunity to have 2 instructional coaches this year, and very fortunate to bring one over that from our district, from another school who has lots of experience. So they'll be working, focusing on the unit guides and aligning the objectives and the lesson plans to the standards with the teacher modeling as well as the assessment piece, just to make sure it's all in alignment. And then we'll also be providing differentiated coaching for teachers. So what we have is, as we're doing our walkthroughs, identifying the specific needs of each of our teachers on campus, and then phasing the teachers through the support that they'll receive. So, for example, phase 1 may focus on the classroom culture and putting the procedures and routines into place, and then aligning the objectives, like I said, with that teacher modeling and the assessment piece, or the exit tickets. And then as teachers start to master those skills, we'll add in aligning that student practice piece, tightening of the procedures, and then master teachers would receive support to deepen student engagement and creating those student-led lessons and those student-led discussions. And then this was all based off of looking at the Danielson framework, looking at Teach Like a Champion, and looking at Get Better Faster. So just making sure that our teachers are getting that specific support that they need to move them forward. We did decide at Gateway this year, we'll continue with our guided reading like I stated before, but we are focusing on less and more specific items so that we can dig deeper into those with our teachers to move them forward.
I'm just curious too, first, how many teachers do you have on your campus and how many are, and I ask this because, you know, I know that where I work, there's quite a bit of turnover, and I know that it's always hard to get people, you know, on the same page, get the professional development that they need, and you know, not only just in the academics, but also in the behavior supports and all that kind of stuff. So how many new teachers do you have this year, and out of how many total teachers?
So we have 38 observable teachers. We brought in, I believe it was 9 new ones to Gateway. One of those is a brand new teacher, where last week was her very first day of teaching. We have 2 who started mid-year in the district last year, and then all of our other teachers came with experience. So we were very fortunate this year that the new teachers that we hired at Gateway came to us with experience. But in the last few years, the number of new teachers that we have was the reason that we decided that we needed to refocus on PBIS, because they have not received that intensive training. So it was good for all of our staff. It's new for all of them this year.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity for me to share some highlights for excellency with you tonight. So if we take a look at some highlights of this past year, we can see that in math, we have increased substantially in grade 7th and 5th grade in our passing scores. Also, we had a number of minimally proficient students in ELA decreased in grades 3, 4, 6, and 7. And we were particularly excited about that because, as you know, formerly we did have the status of a focus school, which meant that we really did want to focus on our bottom quartile students. So for us, that was something that was pretty powerful, that we can see that our efforts are paying off slightly. So we were excited. You know, however, we did have one grade level where that number did decrease, and so I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we are doing, looking at that. So first of all, you know, we're always trying to take a look at data. So we were not particularly surprised, especially in that one grade level. We have a wealth of data coming from our curriculum department, ATI, the different things that we're using, and so we really did know that we needed to make some big changes. We tried to be asset-based thinkers, and so really thinking about, like, you know, what are the strengths that our teams bring and our teachers have, and in that we actually kind of started thinking a little bit outside of the box. So we made some shifts, you know, really trying to compartmentalize when we were able to, moving some teachers who might be able to have a strength in one grade level to another, to help support that, really restructuring, that was something that was important. So, for example, we had a lot of teachers move where they're just going to be able to focus on ELA instruction for a whole grade level, but it's really allowing them to teach to their strengths and really being able to focus on what they're doing with those students, even though they may have more students. So that was something that we're trying this year to make sure that we are being proactive. Another thing that we have really had a focus on math, and we haven't focused as much of our efforts on ELA. We did have these wonderful resources, as Mr. Zaragoza expressed earlier today, but it was a learning curve for us. And so in our work with our new resources, we knew that we needed to really understand how did they integrate with our new Arizona standards, and also with our planning and our unit guides. How do we take a look at that? So we were really fortunate. We had a lot of participation at Curriculum Cabinet, and so that brings knowledge back to the site, right? Because not only they're able to really dig deep, and they're able to really take a look at, you know, how all of those things integrate. And so we were really excited to have that level of participation. Also, we were able to bring together a group of teachers reading interventionists and coaches and leadership team together to really work on guided reading. Because one of the things like we can look at the curriculum and wonders, and how does that work for like that big picture, but at the end of the day, we still have these students that have these individual needs, and like how are we really integrating that and working with the schedule so that we're being efficient and effective. And so they came together and they were like a powerhouse. I mean, if any of you were, Excellency was like busy this whole entire summer. Every time you walk on, there was some teacher group working in the conference room on something. So it was really exciting to see the work that they came up with. They really took a look at like what are those measurable things that we can take a look at, like look for's. What does that look like in guided reading? What does that look like when we're talking about differentiated small group instruction in ELA? And so making sure that they had a clear understanding of that using research-based practices from some works that we've read together, and really putting together a professional development plan that was reasonable with something that we could bite off and not get like too fast or have another thing added to the plate, but something that integrated with the stuff and with the other stuff that we've learned in curriculum cabinet. So we started our professional development before our school started, and we have a plan to integrate that through the whole year, through not only training, but also planning, observations, just making sure that we're covering all those things, because we really do want to improve our English language arts skills. That's something that's been a little bit of a challenge for us. We're going to continue. Obviously, we have our math cadre. They work extensively, but one of the things that we did discover is that we have given a lot of professional development and training on the math practices, but we really want to make sure that we are explicitly helping our teachers to apply them. And one of the great things that we discovered in Curriculum Cabinet is that they also had a way of breaking that down into 4 quarters where they were focusing on 2 different math practices. And so I don't want to say we're slowing down, but we're going deeper, because it's going to give us an opportunity to work with these materials that are designed for each quarter, and then at the same time allow us to focus on how we're providing support for that. So like, if you're an experienced teacher and you really do understand those math practices, are you the kind of teacher that we're bringing somebody to during that quarter to be able to talk about it? Again, I think that it's not just about that training, but it's bringing it back through with the planning. And so making sure that our planning is aligned with the units, and that we're really saying, okay, are we really explicitly teaching these 2 particular math practices? When can we come and help you with it? Do you need any support with it? When you're actually going to be teaching it? Not to say that they're not responsible for teaching all of them, but like really supporting them when it's like focused and applicable. Finally, let me take a breath real quick. Finally, a big exciting piece that we have that came out of our signature program is our social and emotional learning. So the board last year allowed us to have an additional special areas teacher. And so our teacher is a social and emotional learning teacher, and that's something that's really exciting for us. We have a whole group. It kind of works with our PBIS, but last year we did the trauma training. This whole group went and did social emotional with Makisa, and they brought back just a lot of really interesting stuff. So again, piled back into the conference room and talked about like, how do we bring social emotional learning to the classroom, and how do we integrate it with what academics are? And I'm going to read a quote because Melissa Yoder really wanted me to make sure that you guys heard this. She said, social emotional learning, research states that explicitly teaching social emotional learning competencies within the academic context yields so much more academic growth and achievement for all students. So this team of teachers really took a look at like, what were those 5 areas of social emotional learning. So we have social awareness, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. And we aligned that with our CARES program, which, as you probably remember from our presentation, came out of our signature program, and those are our core values. And so we aligned all of those, and we talked about how you can integrate those not only into like our character building and community building process, but also within our academics. So how do we use those kinds of components when we are having discussions and conversations with one another in math and English language arts? So it's not just about, like the community circle. It's really meant to like be integrated throughout our schools. So we're really excited about that program, and they also too came up with a plan because we want to make sure that we have it. And they, delivered a powerful professional development to our whole entire staff, and so it's something that we are super excited about. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share the great things that are happening in our curriculum and the direction that we're going to be taking this year. We're at a critical stage because with the new building, we're really disrupting how academic sessions are happening. We really know that we're in a brand new opportunity and challenge. So we're talking about flexible spacing and about collaborating into grade levels and multi-grade levels. And that conversation we started in the second semester. And based on that emphasis, so this is a great opportunity that we have. We use the data, TEL survey, AC Merit, Casella, and then I want to explain to you the process and the critical thinking that my team and I went through to come up with the next steps for these highlights. But let me not skip the highlights. Sorry. Passing rates in math have increased overall, particularly in grades 4, 5th, 6th, and 8. The number of students who score proficient increased in grades 4, 5, and 8 grades, and the number of students who say minimum proficient decreased. Passing rates in ELA improving grades 4 and 6 were stable in 7 and 8, and decreasing grades 3rd and 5th. Decreased passing rates were not noted at 3rd grade in ELA, and there was a substantial decrease in math. And I would like to address, because one of the things that we did, we look at this highlighters, we have our celebrations, we have also our looking in the mirror and saying, where is our grit? Where is our tenacity, our resilience? Are we emphasizing into a growth mindset? Can we take what we learned last year and move it forward this year? And the answer is yes. So hopefully you're going to see in the next action steps what our thinking was. We wanted to address ELA based on the data, 3rd grade and 5th grade. But we also were addressing the entire school, different areas. The first thing that we look at is having the right people in the right places. And as Mr. Zaragoza and Ms. Castillo have mentioned, so we have $1 million investment in curriculum. We have how can we accelerate the process? How can we widen narrow the wide between Arizona and the other school districts and our district. And the important thing is, as we're competing to get with the shortage of teachers across the nation and in the state, competing with each other to get the best team members, I want to share that 3 years ago, Creighton Elementary hired 17 teachers. Last year was 12 teachers. This year, 8 teachers. So we're decreasing, and we're doing a good job of keeping the right teachers, because we have so many resources, but the number one component is the teachers, and my confidence is on the team that I have. And the team that I have is the ones that totally solidify and visualize every idea. They're the leaders in our campus. So one of the things that we did was to emphasize our hiring efforts, concentrating to bringing the best candidates. There's only one new teacher, and he proved his self-worthiness of becoming a Cobra by becoming a long-term sub last year because of one of the teachers resigning. The rest of the 7 teachers, they have anywhere from 4 to 10 years of experience, including a national board certified teacher. So we allocated that teacher in 3rd grade, and his strength is in math. So another conversation that we had, that it was a challenge and a problem, and we turned it into a good solution, was that the decrease in Title I funds. So instead of having 3 reading interventionists, I could only afford 2. So I talked to my reading intervention and I said, I need your expertise in 3rd grade. So we have the reading interventionist in 3rd grade, and now we have this national board certified, taking care of the science and the math, and the other one is doing the ELA component. So that's just one example of how in critical situations you can still see the light. In Creighton we're making waves, and our waves are small, but the tsunami is coming, so wait for it. Another thing that we realized in 3rd and 5th grade when it comes to ELA is that the placement of the teachers that we did last year, they were new to ELD positions. They were not new to education, but they were new to ELD. And we all know that being an ELD teacher, it requires different preparation and different tenacity. So even though we had a calendar and provided professional development, it was not enough. An example, 5th grade ELD teacher resigned at the beginning of January, and then we had to find a very suitable substitute to complete the year and to better support that class. So we're expecting the reclassification rates and the AC merits being negatively impacted in 5th grade. Another thing that we did, we concentrated in key vocabulary. We know that in our school and in our district, we're not very diverse. We serve one subgroup, and that's the Hispanic group. And we're working with this Hispanic group for so long that we're experts in them, and sometimes we forget, and we need to be reminded that we know you, we know what's the best strategy to accelerate the language acquisition. So we're emphasizing Marzano and Linda Bay, words come to life, back into academics. When you go into ELA or science or social studies, it's rich in content. If you don't understand the concept, the rest is just garbage. So we're going to bring that back and an emphasis with language production. Also, we have the great opportunity that we have the 20% to the school. So we align with all of our action steps. We are in school improvement plan, which we have the right goals since last year, and we're going to continue with those goals. And what we're changing is the action steps. So if the plan doesn't work, don't change the goal, just change the plan. And that's what we're doing. We're reinventing ourselves. Also, we're looking into our restructure of our intervention groups through the school, following a specific cohorts of students where they need it's greater, and knowing that now we have from 3 to 2 reading interventionists, so we're realigning those resources as appropriately. Finally, we didn't want to forget that, yes, the data is telling us that it was 3rd grade and 5th grade, but we know that those students are now new 4th graders and new 6th graders, so we also are implementing interventions, targeting intervention for those grade levels, so we can do a follow-up during the school day, and also after school with the 20% rate. When it came to math, we concentrated again in 3rd grade and 7th grade. You're going to see the same bullet of having the best candidates and the best teachers in there. And something very, very unique happened last year, if I can share quickly. We have our 7th grade teacher and our 8th grade math teacher, because last year we implemented block scheduling, allowing our teachers to have 2 hours blocks. And also, instead of having one teacher who are responsible for 2 grade levels, 6 classrooms, now they concentrate on 7 and 8. One of the teachers in 7th grade, she ran with flexible spacing with centers, which is something that you don't see in middle school. So it was very exciting. He has highly engaging sessions. The other teacher, math teacher in 8th grade, she did more of a whole group and then a little bit of a small group at the end. The results that we got were different. For example, thank you. Thank you. The results that we received in 8th grade was this teacher was able to increase the number of proficiency students from 9% to 27%. Also, she was able to reduce from 70 students, minimum proficiency students, from 71 to 60%. So that's an increase of almost 300 for the proficiency and a decrease of 11 points. So, as again, we're going to have that collaboration between groups because they both did something great, but the results were different. So we want to make sure that we embed and share the strengths that each one of those have. And that's just one example of the multiple conversations and reassignments that we're doing in our school. That goes with the vertical articulations among teams. And then we're going to continue to support our 2 coaches doing initial planning meetings. And this is going to be our 2nd year having the Greenback, which is an online intervention program in which the teachers can assign specific lessons based on misconceptions, track them, and then reassign. And it's all in a virtual environment that for the students it's highly engaging because it's all like games. After we said these are the areas ELA math, then we want to also share with the board that the idea that we have for all the school, for all grade levels, our goal number 1 is to improve the best initial instruction for all the students. And the way we're going to plan to do this, and you have heard it from other principals in other schools, is by really retaking and dissecting standards and taking back the PLCs. How are we going to teach it? What are we going to do if they don't get it? How are they going to do it if they already know it? So those are going to be the guiding questions when we do our meetings with all of the teachers. as I said, this is a critical and very important time for Creighton because we want to make sure that the right people is in the right way, thinking as a growth mindset. Are we growing? Are we growing fast enough? Are we ready for the new space that we're going to be getting thanks to the communities and all the factors? So that's the journey that we have. And once again, thank you for having us and allowing us to share all of the plans and all of the great things that are happening in all of our schools. If you have any questions.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight some of the success of Biltmore Prep and next steps I'm taking as a new principal at Biltmore Prep. I want to start out and really recognize that Dr. Lauren and the work that he put in place with his team at Biltmore Prep last year because as a result of his hard work and the work of the team, Biltmore had some great academic achievement success and surpassed both the district and state averages in all grade levels for both ELA and math. And we're recognized with the Creighton School District Academic Excellence Award for that higher than state average on Arizona Merit. It says for most grade levels, but it was really for all grade levels in both ELA and math. And looking at some of the data, the 3-year trend shows that students are not moving from proficient to highly proficient. The exception with that is 8th grade math, where there was a 36% increase in the percentage of students highly proficient from the previous year. So some of my next steps as a new principal at Biltmore is I'm really taking time to talk and listen and get to know what some of those pieces are that are in place to support that academic success at Biltmore. Before the school year began, I sat down with Ms. Grom, our assistant principal, and had an opportunity to talk with all teams and teachers, individual teachers, to really listen to them. I asked about what was working at Biltmore, what were the areas of strength, what were the challenges, and what were their expectations of me, and what support did they need from me being a new principal at Biltmore. Really, in the first week of school, week and 2 days, taking time to just listen, observe, build relationships, making a point to start getting to know some of the students, some of the parents, and hearing from them as well. Already, with our gifted teacher on assignment, we've had some conversations about looking, and she's put together a spreadsheet that really shows our gifted students and their performance on AZ Merit, and putting some plans in place to work with her to support those students and ensuring they're making that movement from proficient to highly proficient. And again, then just recognizing Dr. Lauren and his work last spring with the team to identify the need for an accelerated math course in middle school for 6th and 7th grade, and the work that he did with curriculum and instruction over the summer to ensure that there was a curriculum in place and a schedule to support that. So very excited in our first year to move forward implementing both a general education math course in 6th and 7th grade and an accelerated math course for 6th and 7th grade. So we still have a lot of work to do. Still trying to figure out the pieces of a new leadership team and how we're working together to continue to support the success of Biltmore Prep already in place. Thank you.
Dr. DeMar, and it's an open question, I think, for everyone, but a lot of the next steps are, this is what the principal is doing, this is our staff, we talk about professional development, progress monitoring. I guess this is the core of the work, and the answer could be nothing, but what role do our parents play in our academic achievement? I know some schools, like BASIS, are very explicit. They're we don't want parents involved, you drop your kids off, this is our business, and parents choose that. That's something that is very clear. Speaking just directly about Biltmore Prep, it's a different community. And it's diverse. Some parents want to be super engaged, some don't, some are looking for direction from the teacher on how to be involved. So I'm just curious if there is a carved out strategy on how parents play a role here. And the answer might be APTT. That's something that we've looked at as a district over the years. But I just think that our orientation as a governing board and as a district has been to be better engaged and collaborative with our parents. So, and I didn't hear that at all from these presentations. So I'm curious.
I don't know if I have a really good answer for that. I'm not sure what the practices have been in place. I built more prep in regards to our parents outside of my own experience as a parent and not super involved in my son's academics. But with that, I've had some great conversations with parents in my short time that I've been and kind of see the gamut of very involved, supportive, want to know everything, and some that want the responsibility back on their children for it. So I think it's just continuing to look at what pieces are in place and support parents with how involved they want to be, and having those conversations with teachers of how they communicate with parents to keep them informed and provides resources and support for those parents that want to be involved, and more support for kids that parents aren't as involved. I know that there's a volunteer requirement, but I don't remember what it is. 25 hours a year per family in place. And that volunteer looks different for every family, I'm sure. I'll get to know more, I'm sure.
If I could, I appreciate you asking that question, because one of the things that we, at least in the curriculum results for the TEL survey, we discovered that there was a low percentage, like what, if I remember correctly, about 43% of our teachers felt like the parents were not deeply involved in the education, and that was an area of concern. And what we did last year, and we're going to continue this year to keep involving the parents, because if we have that mentality that they're not involved, we need to change first internally, and change a culture, and see what is the misconception that we may have as teachers and as a staff, because there's some comfort in where I don't speak English or I don't speak Spanish, so therefore I don't attempt to communicate. But if everybody comes forward and gestures translate, smiles translate, so the different ways to put it in positions that might be uncomfortable or we're not ready for them, but we can work to build those relationships. So last year, one of the things that we tried and tested and it worked well. We asked our teachers, we know that you have 25, 26 students, you cannot possibly have and know every single parent, but can you do 3? Can you do 2? So I asked all of the teachers to give me the names of 2 parents or 3 parents, and when it came to APTT, when it came to our school improvement meetings, or when it came to any school events, those were the 3 phone calls that they were doing. Those were the 3 personalized letters that they would send, in addition to the other spectrum of parent involvement strategies. So we're going to continue with that venue and working with our staff, saying what was the misconception, where can we connect the dots and reestablish that connection.
I will be brief, and I know we're not going right down the line again, but I would like to say, I think sort of along the same lines, I think it's about like what the community and like the way that they want to be engaged, and that's what we are really trying to delve deep and find out in a very diverse community that's Excellencia serves. And so last year we made, we still aligned ourselves with the different aspects of APTT and the requirements that we have for our parent engagement nights, but we actually pulled in parent focus groups to really get an idea of like what were the things that were preventing, or the barriers that are preventing higher engagement levels that we really we desire. A couple of things were that they love the one-on-one conversations, and so like really just having those, being able to continue with the we get a ton of attendance with that when we're able to provide those one-on-one conversations through parent-teacher conferences. But then just really realizing like at a family at Excellence you might have up to 6 kids, like that's 6 different nights that you might have to go to in APTT, and when you're a working family, like what does that look like? And so really trying to, we worked a lot with the Creighton Community Foundation to really think about like how are we creating these events so that they are accessible for our parents, and that we, they might be able to go from different grade levels to different grade levels, so that it isn't something that is seen as burdensome, and just trying to think outside the box. So I think, we're still continuing that work because we aren't seeing the engagement that we really want to see, and so we'll continue to do that, but I think it's really just trying to figure out like what our community really wants.
If I may, 2 quick thoughts. We are putting into place lots of technology tools with the focus being really to create empowerment on behalf of for our learners, for our parents, for our staff. And so 2 new tools that have come out that have just been recently introduced are Parent View, which is the portal into Synergy. This is going to give us a tremendous and new opportunity to engage with our families very quickly, leveraging the power of technology. Many of our families have smartphone access. So Parent View is going to allow us to push out assignment updates, grade information, and create a question and dialogue stream between teacher and the parents at a level that we have yet to achieve. In addition to that, we've also really, especially in the K-5 classrooms, been working with our teachers to integrate the use of Seesaw into regular family engagement practice. Mr. Zaragoza, you referenced an app. I don't know if it's Seesaw or not, but Seesaw is a very cool, almost Facebook-like way to receive information and updates from the classroom. So throughout the day, you can get updates from your child's teacher about work that's been done. So instead of having the conversation, like I just want to piggyback on Dr. DeMar's comments, I try to be a really involved parent. It's hard to stand on top of all of it, but it's really cool when I get an update from my child's teacher saying that a new piece of work has been added to Seesaw. So I can look at it and then instead of at the end of the day saying, hey, how was your day? And getting a nothing response. I can actually pull up the picture and say, hey, I saw you did this today. Tell me more about it. So I think with some tweaks to how we talk with our parents and providing some, probably conversation starters, there's a whole new tool set that's just now beginning to roll into the hands of our parents. And I'm very excited to be able to highlight those. Thank you.
Dr. DeMar, could I get you to flip the last? Thank you very much.
I think you had other comments or two.
Just one thing for, I kind of noticed that in the what we're going to do next part of the presentations, I heard a lot of good things, and it seemed to me like a lot of the, as a teacher for many years, it seemed like a lot of the good things are eventually going to fall to the teacher to, learn a new way or get coaching or this or that. And I just kind of wanted to, you don't have to answer, but I kind of have a question. If you're giving teachers more things to do, are you taking something away? Because we know teachers' plates are already super full and stuffed and overflowing. Are you taking something away? Or are you giving them more planning time to do it? This is just something to think about. Because how are we going to do it? I mean, I just heard, well, we're going to do this to the teachers. The teachers will do this. The teachers will do that. How are we going to? This leads to teacher burnout. And I know every year, I've been on the school board for 5 years, so I know every year we have this presentation, and then we have the part where we say we're going to do this and this and this. And I know every year it works out, and I know every year lots of teachers leave too. But and then there's some schools where the teachers aren't leaving as much, which is wonderful. So that's all I had to say about that. Thank you.
I think the important piece will be for that is the level of support that's provided. And that's a discussion that we've been having since starting from the leadership seminar this summer ongoing. Is that what does that support look like? How do we get alongside? It means a service team coming alongside the principals, the leadership teams. It means the leadership teams coming alongside the teachers. And so how are we supporting each other as we're going through this together? And the other piece that is going to be helpful is we're going deeper with the mathematical practices that we did trainings with last year and with the student engagement. So it isn't necessarily new, it's just taking it deeper and providing that practice and that feedback, having an opportunity to have professional development, going and practicing it, having someone come in, whether it be a coach, whether it be a principal principal or assistant principal or a colleague, and being able to then come and have discussions with each other and say, okay, so what's working, what's not working, what's the next piece that we need to support each other with. So I think it's the process in which we do the professional development and provide that support. And then again, going to how are we monitoring our kids, and are we catching them quicker versus waiting a length of time. So if you put things into place and you're not monitoring that progress for a long time, your gap is going to be bigger than if you monitor it on a more frequent basis. So those are the important keys that we've been working really hard together as a team, and how the team has been working with their staffs on. The final slide here.
Yeah, I just had one more question
Sure.
for Dr. DeMar about the very last bullet regarding offering an advanced math course for grades 6 and 7. That's happening this year, this coming year?
It's in place right now.
It is, okay, great. And so my question is, what about 8th grade and those kids that are, there must be 8th graders that have a need for increased, advanced math. Is that something that we're doing as well?
So there wasn't actually the curriculum developed for 8th grade, correct, Eric? To accelerate it, but
We built the framework for 8th grade, we built a 3-year path to be able to accelerate our students to, so eventually, starting now, the students will have completed 6th, 7th, and a sufficient amount of 8th grade standards to be able to take a true algebra course after following this path. So that's what we've created. It doesn't extend all the way right now to this year's 8th graders, but it's creating a path so that no students get to that algebra course with significant gaps, which is often the fear when you try to accelerate kids through, is that they may take algebra, but they may often miss out on fundamental standards that actually lead to greater levels of success later on. So we would be happy to provide additional information about that path. It's actually available to students district-wide.
Okay, great.
The piloting piece happening in the program.
And then just to add to that, so, we know that we don't have that currently in place for our 8th graders, but Ms. Turner does have some additional time in her schedule to work with 8th grade where she's able to differentiate her instruction and provide some of that support for those kids that are ready for this year in 8th grade.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there no, for any of our schools actually, is there no partnership with Phoenix Union as far as whether it's us through buses or, I don't know if Phoenix Union does it. I just know that, I'm just curious, because where I work, they have a bus every morning that picks up kids for geometry because we do have algebra in the school and pre-algebra. So does that exist? Did it ever, I'm just curious, did it ever at one time? Because I know
We
they
used to do it.
Yeah, so what exactly, was that who was it led by? Was it led by Creighton? Was it led by Phoenix Union? And who facilitated the whole thing?
At Kennedy, we're pretty fortunate. We got a new hire last year who's actually certified to teach algebra. So last year we were able to offer an algebra class, and we had 11 out of 16 of our kids pass the AQT test. And so she's going to be offering it again this year as well.
So would it be a possibility for other students throughout the district to then take that algebra class with that teacher? Or is there an opportunity with Phoenix Union for algebra classes or geometry classes even for more advanced kids?
So the path that I was speaking about, we did build it so that it's accessible to all students across the district. We have worked with Phoenix Union in an advisory capacity to get information. They share curriculum and instructional resources with us. What we have been challenged by in the past are some of the logistical and timing pieces around busing students out of our district into Phoenix Union, busing teachers into our district, and a number of those complicating factors have made it unable to move forward. So we have adopted the approach that the best strategy for us really is to build our own. And this path that we're describing actually leads to a true course in which it is our goal that students are able to take these in their end of course assessment, and we can actually set the course up within Synergy so that it feeds into the state and actually is an approved course of study with related standards. That really right now is our best true path to moving kids forward. And we like to use Phoenix Union for their knowledge and their resources, but we're trying to move forward kind of on our own.
So, board members, does anybody have any comments, or was there something that they, that stood out to them, something about the leadership that they've seen? I just want to kind of go around and give everybody a chance to share. Don, do you want to go?
Well, I have two things. Basically, the first thing, I know Excellencia last year had the least amount of turnover, and I'm thinking it's somewhat the same this year. You're pretty stable.
No, actually, we did have quite a bit of turnover. We have 13 new teachers this year. But of those 13, we have 3 that are returning teachers who have previously left, and then we also have a couple of transfer teachers from other schools. So about 8 new teachers to Excellencia this year. You know, I think, oh, sorry.
It's okay. I was going to ask out of how many observable teachers?
41. You know, it is a challenge, and I think that it was one of the we did know early on. I think that HR does a nice job of letting us kind of, you know, having exit surveys and talking to us, and it is another piece of data that goes into like how are you restructuring, and I think that member Sexton Reese is you know, we do need to kind of think about that asset-based thinking for our teachers. Like, it's something that we do take into consideration because we don't want them to burn out, because if they burn out, then I'm going to burn out. It's a tough job. So, but, you know, it is something that we're always keeping our pulse on because it's another piece of data. And truthfully, like, we had a TEL survey, and that's something that we have a couple of areas that we definitely need to work on. But overall, they do, you know, our teachers had felt that Excellencia was a great place to work and learn. It's, you know, there's a lot of different factors that go into teacher retention, I think.
Okay, my train of thought was
Sorry.
going. It's okay, you know, sometimes it doesn't make it to the detail. Last year, I was at Mackin, and one of the teachers, I don't know why, probably my age, just walking around, I was walking across the campus, and they thought I was one of the substitutes, a new substitute. When things like that happen, I don't correct them, I just go with the flow. And find out better things. But anyway, I asked why this teacher stayed. And what she said was the principal, Mrs. Frost. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the principal. I mean, there's other mitigating factors, you know, somebody moves out, or, you know, they have to go back home, things like that. But a lot of your teachers stay because of who you are. And so give yourself a pat on the back for retaining these teachers. And also, Dr. Rudo does a good job of filling you up for teachers again this year, which is fantastic. And hearing it, y'all talk with, I have 8 new teachers, but only one of them is a real new teacher, first time in the classroom. Getting experienced teachers into our schools is always more helpful than having a brand new person coming out of college. So thank you, Dr. Lugo, also. My other comment was, when I looked at this, I'm not sure, probably Sunday or Saturday, when I was going through this slideshow, it's just a request, but next time we have something like this, I was looking for like graphs for the schools, like on page 3 and 4. You know, the school, how many, you know, what were their 3 years? You know, most of them went up, which We had an increase on this and things like that. And that's a result of hard work of the teachers and the staff and principals, and should be celebrated, but I'm more tangible. I like to see things kind of that way. Maybe a graph showing where the schools are against the state. I mean, we had only one comment regarding how the school did against state standards, and that was from BP, the last one, but you did above the state standards, which is fantastic also. But a graph would help, because I'm sure they're around because the administration, in the name of equity, probably is putting more supports into the schools that need more supports, to bring them up into this, more into that area where the state standards are. And it's just a suggestion. It would help me in my simple-minded things. Thank you.
I wanted to start with the kudos. I really noticed we have a new principal, Miss Tracy Pastor, and I really appreciated in one of your slides, I think it was the middle one, where you talked about parent involvement through communication and active engagement, and how you're getting the Espanol out there too, and really hablando con toda la gente, aunque hablan español o inglés. If y'all didn't understand, I'm sorry. And also the special education subgroup, because I think this is the first time in my 5 years that I've heard somebody address them. I know you're doing great things for them, and Patrick had a great time at Excelencia, but I, that's so important too. Thank you.
I think we've had conversations as a board on the value of AZ Merit and what that means and how that fits in with all the other things that we really value. I think where, what I think about this in particular right now is there's very few, when parents are choosing schools and they have a lot of choices, it's really easy to just go to another school. There's a lot of different criteria that they evaluate if this is going to be a good school for their child. And a lot of that is just they have to go and feel it out. The only thing that really we have in common across the state are these test scores, and then of course that's if you even boil it down, they might just look at the school label, which are coming back. So for me, when we're really challenged for our viability on our student enrollment, it's important. It's really important amongst all the other things we care about. So what I appreciated hearing from all of our principals was, here's where we're at, good and bad. We have areas to work on, and we're going to work on it. So that to me is just a testament on our leadership. I hope we follow through. I know we have, and I think we need to get better. So those are my comments on leadership to your point, and I'd love to hear the superintendent's reflections on this as well.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you, and to echo what Ms. Young said, because this is my 10th year in teaching, and while I've worked for some really great administrators, we still haven't had that visionary principal leader, and I found her this year, and I can't tell you the difference I feel now that I finally have that person at the helm. I feel like I can stay in this a little bit longer, that I might even go for my own leadership cert, because I have somebody that I can learn from and study with and grow with. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you, because you guys really are the reason, because Arizona, our legislature has made it very difficult to be a teacher, but we do it because we love it, and having the right people there to support us truly does make all the difference in the world. And I want to say I appreciate you all very much, and thank you for all the work that you do. Yeah, that's really all I want to say. Thank you guys very much.
Well, you can tell we have a group of expert educators. These are folks who don't shy away from the data. They are courageous and look at it and talk about it, and they're not blame-oriented. In fact, you heard several of them say asset-based, strength-based in our approach. Their analysis is spot on, down to the child. So I know many of them keep boards and are watching targeted students for assistance. They're extremely scientific and artistic and humanistic in the balance that they present. So your observation about them as whole leaders is outstanding. The ownership is fantastic for next steps in our future progress. We do have work to do, and we've all agreed in our individual conversations and our group conversations. We'll go to the grave with work to do, and I think the focus on the academic vocabulary, as mentioned by several of you, the focus on the response to intervention supports for our targeted students is going to get tighter and more short-term turnaround, not, you have to go down the hall for life, but we're going to keep working very much on the skill scaffolding. The fact that time modifications were mentioned, that we use time differently, keeps us agile and flexible and less, we put a master schedule together so we're stuck for the year. So we're demonstrating much more flexible and agile leadership in terms of responsiveness to the child as we see it happen and the learning happen. And then that basic focus on good, best first instruction. I just hear it over and over again in our conversations. So I too want to thank everyone for taking this seriously, knowing that it's important, looking at it in the full-length mirror with the fluorescent lights on, and then saying, all right, here's what's next that we know as experts will work. So thank you.
I just want to quick close out here. We provided you a slide with the A through F school labels, the percentage breakdown. Our anticipation was for embargo labels to come out on the 28th, with the embargo being lifted on September 5th, but the state and the federal government continue to have conversations, and things took place last week where there's a possibility that might push down the road a little bit. So we will keep you posted, but be guaranteed that as soon as we receive the information that the embargo has been lifted, that very next board meeting, we will come back with that presentation. So thank you so much for your participation. We really appreciate the two-way dialogue. It's really critical, and we look forward to returning and sharing progress. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to item 6B, for which I actually have a public comment card, but where are we going to?
Cassie can sit in Tracy's chair, so you guys can go ahead and adjourn to the audience, and then our parent can come to chair. Ms. Tracy sitting in.
Yes.
Tracy, if you don't mind helping her get to her spot, that would be great.
I'd like to welcome Callie Kosser.
Sorry, I said that. That was my problem. I said that. My problem.
Callie Kosser. Did I say it right? Callie?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Thank you. I wasn't actually prepared to speak, just to listen initially, but I'm the parent of a transgender son, Jack, previously known as Maya. Jack, just started kindergarten this year, so naturally, I have fears of just Jack starting kindergarten. We've been in the transition of Jack being transgender since he was about 3. It's been consistent. Our family has been really supportive of this transition, close friends, and I really don't think we were faced with the term transgender until Jack started school. And all of a sudden the questions of, how are we going to allow him to assert his identity in school? How is the school going to respond to that? I know there's a lot of social debate about this right now, especially in other states where there's bathroom laws being put into place. My fear as a parent was Jack being bullied. the safety, mental, physical, and emotional safety of my child was the biggest fear. And I think everybody in this room can identify with a bullying experience, either with yourself or someone close to you. So it's a fear, I think, of all parents. However, I have to say that we're in the second week of school barely, and the overwhelming support we've received from Tracy and Ms. Mullins regarding Jack and identifying with that has been amazing. I was prepared to fight because I didn't know what to expect. So I was prepared to fight or even go as far as taking Jack out of this school, out of Loma Linda, and put him in a school that may be more supportive. Thankfully, I haven't had to do that. The dialogue has been open. We talked with Ms. Mullins, her kindergarten teacher, before the first day, and Ms. Mullins was amazing in her way of thinking and addressing the situation. She asked questions, saying, how does Maya identify right now? She wanted to make sure she was supportive of that. We addressed the bathroom issue. And I wanted to give it the first couple of days to see how Jack would do. And Tracy took it upon herself to reach out to me directly. Within, I think, the first day of school, actually, we spoke. And I can't tell you how much that support means to me, because our children are at school just as much as they are at home. And the support we receive from schools is so, it is important for our kids, regardless of if they're transgender, where are they coming from. That support is amazing. So Jack is allowed to use the boys' bathroom at school. That has been up for discussion, and we want to be, even as a parent, I want to be respectful of other children and other parents and staff, because I know that not everybody agrees with our way of thinking with the transgender child, and that's okay for me, but it's important for my child to be respected. And I feel like Tracy and the staff at Loma Linda have been genuinely supportive. It's not a CYA thing, it's genuinely supportive of Maya or Jack and being who he is. We talked even today, we had an open dialogue about how other teachers and students are responding to Jack. And we're leaving it up to Jack to identify himself as that such. And that's something that Tracy and Ms. Mullins have agreed with as well. So I hope that this policy can be put into place around the schools in the Creighton district, because I think that regardless of, again, if it's a transgender student or not, knowing that parents have the support to allow their children to be in a safe environment and to be supported in every which way shows a great deal about what your district is about for parents in the community. That's all I had.
Thank you very much. And that will take us right into the discussion. This is a first read from the Arizona School Boards Association Policy Alert number 3. So typically we take a look at it, maybe have a small discussion, and we don't usually make any decisions on a first read. So, so anybody want to?
I'll just add that when these come back for second read, they're normally tucked into consent. So if we have any points we want to raise, this is the time to do that. I guess we can do that at second read too, but the idea is that we get our ideas on the table if there are any objections or concerns, so that no one's caught surprised at second read in consent, where we take an additional step to pull it for discussion.
It's interesting because I was just talking to Dr. Lewis yesterday about a VICE program that I watched about trans kids. I highly recommend it. It's in season 5. It's like the 4th or 5th episode. And this woman whose daughter was also only 5 years old and entering kindergarten went to a board meeting, and the superintendent of the board, a couple of board members, and several members of the audience walked out of the room the minute she got up to the microphone, wouldn't even hear the message that the mother had. So I have a feeling that, we're different here. And if you have a chance, I recommend it because, since, like you said, this is our first read,
Yeah.
if you want to have a deeper understanding, I'm not usually, I think you should read a book first, but, it was a really good program, and I highly recommend it to get that unique perspective of parents and kids who are in the situation.
The only thing, with, other states passing bathroom laws and things like that, I mean, to get around them, of course, you have a single bathroom, which some of our schools might be, because of the years they were built, might be hard to accommodate at times if the state ever decided to pass a bathroom law or anything similar to that. We don't seem to be on the high side of liberalism as a state. But as a board member, the idea of giving a child the choice of where they want to go is a great idea. We're having a single family style bathroom. But to accommodate that, I think some of our schools would be harder the family style due to the fact of their age.
Well, I think that because I feel like we've talked about these types of things. I'm happy to see that we are looking at a policy so we can enshrine that. What that would come with though, because it's not just us passing policy. Like I would hope that there is training. Like what do our teachers do? So glad that Ms. Pastor just stepped in and said, hey, let me figure that out. But if we have a policy, I think it requires that we do further work with our staff, and then additionally, as we continue to update our facilities, these are things we should be proactively thinking about. As clearly, like our buildings that were built a long time ago, we have some challenges, but that doesn't excuse, I think, our responsibility to provide a safe learning environment, and we need to figure it out.
Yeah, I think this policy is just
And one of the things that I learned at one of the sessions that I went to is that the family style bathroom isn't necessarily always the best option. That's not necessarily the first choice of a student. They don't want to be excluded to have to choose that. So that's something we should probably clarify, or make sure everyone understands what the different options are. And
And trade-offs.
yeah. And it looks like there are two different options here, the way I understood it, so we just might want to look at that before.
Page 4 at the top addresses explicitly access to according to the child's identity, self-identity.
It says that the school may make individual user options available to all students who voluntarily seek additional privacy. So that
Not forcing the family,
Correct.
style bathroom.
Right.
So, are there any more comments for today with regards to what Mr. Zargos has said about how this is only a first read, so we're not going to make any decisions today, but when we see it again, it will be in consent. And if you know how consent works, it just about everything gets passed unless it gets pulled. So are there any, this is the opportunity, so does anybody have any other comments?
I just want to remind everyone too that we wanted to update, I think, or check all of our policies to make sure they're all in the same.
Oh, yeah, there, okay, yeah.
And we are in process and have, as we work collaboratively with ASBA.
Okay, thank you.
And so typically, just out of curiosity, Hilda, how long does it usually take before we see it again? Next meeting. Okay, okay. So, yeah, I just wanted to let Ms. Cussard know that in 2 weeks it'll probably be on our consent agenda items.
Well, as superintendent and president, you actually just put it on, so not probably.
Yes. Hilda runs the board, just in case you haven't figured it out. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to our next item, which is item 9A, Business and Plant Creighton District Enrollment Update.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Lewis, members of the executive team, just an opportunity to give a quick update on where we're at in regards to enrollment for this year. I think my title for this, kind of keeping with our adventurous learning theme, is uncharted territory, because we're really dealing with two very different things in our environment, and it's the combination of a shift for us to current year funding, which has a very significant, not only potential but actual impact on the effect that our day-to-day enrollment has on us during those first 100 days in regards to our funding. But then the other component piece of it is, if that happened on its own, it would be a challenge, but it's happening during a time when Dr. Liu was helping us navigate teacher shortage. So there's all sorts of techniques that you might use during a time period where you can go out and pick up highly qualified teachers by the dozen. It becomes far more complex to navigate this sort of minefield of making sure you have enough teachers for classrooms and making sure you don't have too many teachers for the number of kids you have, when you can't really go out and just pick up teachers downstream. So why that preface? Well, what it's caused us to do as a leadership team, we've always watched enrollment pretty closely at the beginning of the year, but now we're really drilling into the micro level, because we not only have to watch to make sure that we have where we're at in regards to enrollment and where we're at in regards to staffing, but what is the interplay of the costs associated with staffing with where we're at regarding enrollment. So we've even taken to some exercises like looking at, if you look at an individual teacher and you look at an average salary of $50,000 a year, we don't get paid based on 180 days when we're dealing with a student. We get paid on a 100-day cycle. It's really just that 100-day window that the funding's based on. So if you break that down to 1/100th of that amount, for each day of that 100 days that we're being tracked as to how we'll be funded based on the number of students we have enrolled, that teacher costs us $500 for that day. So for every additional teacher we have that's beyond the number of teachers we need to establish our school-wide 26-to-1 ratio, which we've been using the last several years throughout our school system, for each extra teacher, that's $500 a day. So if you go the first 10 days of school and you're over by 5 teachers, you've expended $25,000 beyond what you're really designed to be funded for based on how our ratios are currently set. So I just kind of wanted to start with a preface of that. So as we're, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Crystal clear.
Was it crystal clear?
Yeah.
Right. So as we looked at rolling into the school year, one of the things we did is we tried to be much tighter and use a lot of data sources when we were looking at our projection for the numbers of teachers that we needed for the year. And so we based that off of data related to last year's 100th day number, but we also went back and took a look at the demographic data that we received through the demographic study. So if you look at those numbers, it showed us on track. The demographer said we'd be somewhere just under 6,100, probably around 6,080, and we did all of our modeling for staffing based on 6,108. So we were a little, just a touch higher than where demography was, but we felt like we were truly within the ballpark and pretty comfortable with that. As we roll into the 7th day of school, where we find ourselves currently sitting, is we're looking like we're 10 teachers over the number of teachers we would have as a ratio to our students. And so if we look at that, the actual kind of head count enrollment for our students for day 7 was about 5,867 students, which is about 236 students off of that projected number that we were working from. So I went back and started looking at some historical data just to get a sense of, well, where are we probably going to go from here? And what I found was, even though our 100th day number was different from year to year, we had basically less students 100th day of fiscal year 2017 than we had in 2016, I found an interesting ratio, which was that if you took your day 7 number, when it was finally cleaned up in the system and was a relatively accurate number, and you took your day 100 number, there was approximately about a 670 student differential between those two numbers. So if you look at that, for 2016 it was 667, for 2017 it was 676. As you look at other years, that roughly 670 ratio really held true across that time period. So as I looked at that number, I said, okay, well, if we know where we're at ballpark for today, for 7th day, and we wanted to make a prediction about where we're going to be on the 100th day, you would add approximately 670 students to that 5867 number, which would put us well above projection. It would actually put us at around 64, yeah, exactly. So from that perspective, we're feeling pretty comfortable that we've staffed appropriately. Obviously, we'll continue to watch those numbers, so that way if we find that we're not closing the gap between the number of students we're serving and that ratio to the number of teachers, we'll make whatever necessary adjustments are there. But we really have within our system the capacity to not end up in a situation. We can make teachers very comfortable and that we won't end up in a position where we're having to terminate any contracts or lay anyone off, through natural attrition, natural shifts, things like that. Even if we were to end up in a position where we're getting teachers over, we'd be pretty comfortable in making those adjustments. But what it tells us is we have a huge differential between where we are when we start school and where we end up when we hit day 100. And it used to be you could just look at that day 100 number because you were functioning off of last year's day 100. Now in this current year funding model, we really need to start looking more deeply at how do we get students in those seats as early as possible in the year, and what types of factors are affecting how many students we have in those seats. So we're currently in the process not only of researching that, but we're actually going to be pulling together a task force this year that's a business development task force to really look at how the shifts in our business model, and I hate using the term business model, I know we're all about kids, and trust me, I'm all about kids too. I wouldn't put the red sweater on if I wasn't. But
Can you wear the red sweater at the next meeting, please?
yeah, maybe the next time I have to talk about budget numbers, I'll wear the red sweater. So, exactly. But we know that even though we're about kids, we also have to remain financially viable in order to be able to best serve those students. So we really need to start looking at these shifts in the way that we are being funded. What should we be looking at as changes in the way we do business? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a doom and gloom situation of we change our model and that's a negative. We actually have the opportunity to do that research and look into those things and see how do we simultaneously improve what we offer to our students and families while creating a model that's long-term sustainable, that functions within the constraints of what we've been given. So rather than looking at it through a deficit model of, okay, now we've got these funding challenges, we're really trying to flip that, which is why we're looking to the task force to find a way to find, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, or in a more pleasant way of saying it, find a way to leverage the opportunity to look more deeply at what we do and find out how we can do it even more effectively. So that's kind of what I had to share with you on enrollment this evening, but I would be very happy to take any questions that you might have.
What was last year 100-day number?
Last year 100th day number was 6946. Now that's enrollment, that's actual number of students. And we're just going to stick with enrollment.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Or comments as I heard kind of a little bit of agreement that the business development model is a good way to go. That's what I'm sensing from the board. We feel that it's strategically necessary.
All right, so that will take us to item 10A, which is the discussion on the ASBA political agenda for this year. This is one, hold on just a second, sorry.
It's all right. This is happening September 9. Yeah, I'm reserved delegate. And I'm on the committee, so.
And we didn't, and from what I recall, we didn't really like add or prioritize or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So some changes were made, obviously.
Obviously, yeah, yeah. I am kind of curious though to see why did they eliminate protect desegregation funding from any cuts or modifications? That's the one that stuck out to me, that I found interesting. Maybe it got moved somewhere. It's under the first, yeah.
It's number 12.
Oh, wait, oh, they moved it, is that what you're saying? Okay, I got you, all right, thank you. Okay, I got you.
These aren't really necessarily supposed to be prioritized, but they understood that they naturally kind of look that way.
Mm-hmm.
Tried to prioritize a little bit.
All right, so, yeah. So is there any discussion or giving of direction for Ms. Young, since she is the one who is going to be attending this delegate assembly?
I think I actually trust that Ms. Young represents our voice really well. If it's like for what it's worth. At these assemblies, you sometimes hear boards with very different set of values. So if there are opportunities to advocate and raise our concerns about creating a loving and supporting environment for all children, pushing for early learning, because I've been at these things where people have argued very aggressively that we don't need kindergartens. So anyway, I think not just voting, but if there's an opportunity to raise these issues, start that conversation, continue to provide examples, that's I think it maybe goes without saying, but just wanted to put on the record, like that, I'd love for Ms. Young and Ms. McCheffrey to play those roles if and as necessary.
I sat next to a gentleman who actually, well,
Yes. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. We're outnumbered, so be aggressive.
Not too aggressive though, okay? We're kind-hearted leaders, guys.
Be aggressively push and support all of it. Yes, sir.
Take it down to a circle. All right. Does anybody have any future agenda items?
I don't have a future agenda item, but on the date to be determined with future items, the bilingual distinction, I'd like to talk about that. The sooner the better. So if the board makes any decisions, that the principals and the administration can get ready for it, as opposed to waiting until last minute. That's all. You would adjourn.
Second.
Then moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.